Hi, well, here's the next in our series, number 12, on getting started this autumn. And for the next three sessions, I'd like to think a little bit about industrial process and education. And for a lot of people, that'll be a terrible thing to try and equate one with the other. And for other people, it'll be quite obvious. But I want to spend some time trying to think it through. And I have an article recently out in the Times Higher. It might help if I said a little bit about my background, which has been split fairly evenly in time terms between an industrial R&D and then a technology strategy career and an academic career. And what it did mean is that I came to a lot of important things in the academic world quite late in life, learning pedagogy quite late in life. I never really understood why my peers wouldn't look at teaching and learning as a process that you could continue to improve, that you could design, and that you could reduce the effort required to deliver. And I found a huge gap when I went into the field between sort of culturally, between people's attitudes, but also in terms of the whole approach to life. In academia, usually taking more time is good. In industry, it's more expensive. In industry, if you get the same result every time, it's good. But in the academic world, you're really focused on personalizing experiences. And both sides have really good process maps, but they use them in very different ways. I put a list of questions together about what you might think of as an industrial process, highlighting some of the best and some of the worst. You can read it as fast as I can. I'm going to ask a question that you'll probably think is unfair, but I think it points us to some very, very important issues. Why is education done so badly under lockdown, while home shopping has done well? Both are delivering personalized services to individuals. And before you leap to the easy answers, try and think this through. I think the main fears that I've heard articulated and that I experienced in those around me when I was in the academic world was that people are afraid that too much protocol, too much industrialization will take away the human touch and will result in a loss of autonomy. And those things can certainly happen, and I'm not saying that they don't. Also, people are concerned about standards. The more you rely on a process to deliver your standards, the narrower those standards become. And I'll argue in a later case that the more standardized you are, the less chance you have to really stretch students. But I'll come to that later. So having faced up to some of our worst fears, let's try and turn and say what at its very best might a more industrialized view of the world mean. And I think one of the things it might mean is that there is a time for everything and everything has its allotted time. So that's a really important set of comparisons. So much is done informally, so much I found was unacknowledged in terms of people's workloads. Across the sector, wherever you looked, the voices were saying the same things. Secondly, it's a reproducible experience in industry by and large. That's what they strive for. They don't always reach it, but at its best, industry delivers a reproducible experience. And it doesn't really matter whether you're buying fast food on the fly. The best fast food manufacturers have done a phenomenal job in terms of responding to people's needs and giving them an experience that they want. But even at elite institutions, the quality of the meal is expected and reproducible at the very highest quality. And finally, programs are easy to understand and they always work in the correct sequence. And these are marks, in my mind, of the very best of the industrial world. When I first moved into the academic world, I thought I understood what I was doing. I'd published before, I'd done research, I'd produced patents, I'd spoken all over the world at conferences, and I thought that skill set would transfer relatively easily. But I discovered that the academic world was a much more difficult world than I'd imagined. And to begin with, I just thought, well, people aren't organizing themselves properly. I can sort this out in my own life, certainly. And yet, as I tried to do that, I discovered that actually being an academic is a really, really difficult job. And doing it well is incredibly difficult. And so I'd like to spend some time in the next couple of talks thinking a little bit about what can be done about that. So I'm around. Here are some of my coordinates. Please subscribe to this YouTube channel and get in touch if I can help.